Once Human just had its brand new developer AMA session, so we'll go over all the details, all the developer comments there, and the questions that were answered, which go from world building, design philosophy, to event planning, even gameplay systems, and future content. We also have some additional details about the Palworld crossover, as well as a whole bunch more. What's up, World Utopia here, back in with another video. Today we're checking out all things Once Human. Okay, so we're gonna jump right into the AMA, what happened there. First off, for those of you that don't know, an AMA is essentially an Ask Me Anything, or a question and answer system where essentially fans do ask questions, and then the developers come in and answer some of those or most of those questions. This one specifically happened over on the Reddit page, which lasted from November 5th to the 7th of November, and they've accumulated questions for the last week and a half here, where then they were eventually answered. They do have the devs that actually did participate here. The first one here is Rainman, who is an art planner. Then we have Claire, which is the operations planner. That one's going to cover the lab events, operations, and scheduling, even giving insights how the events are planned, balanced, and rolled out across servers. And then last up but not least, they had Loey. They are a game designer focusing on gameplay systems, mechanics, and tuning decisions. That also does incorporate player interactions and progression systems. So depending on what question pertains to what, there are going to be certain people that do answer that. I do also want to preface, this AMA has now ended, so you can't ask any new questions. Those aren't going to be answered after this point. Now, a lot of these questions are super long, as well as their answers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to summarize each and every single question and answer itself. That way we're not here all day kind of breaking down each and every single thing, or at least reading these entirely long answers, especially the questions as well. So I'm going to go over each category and what the questions do pertain to. That way it's a little bit easier to follow. The first one here is the narrative and scenarios. Of course, a major hit on point here is the Manibus and Way of Winter, where there were questions about the ongoing expansions through area revival events. They do want players to revisit these spaces to uncover new events, clues, and interactions. So essentially their goal is a long-term narrative resonance instead of a one-and-done sequel. As they kind of mentioned here in a quote, it's not a traditional sequel, but it's an extension with new events, which will tie directly into Manibus and Way of Winter. There was also questions about more story content and side quests, where they said here, yes, more storylines and side quests are planned. They do have confirmed continuation of that, aligned with the world themes. There was also a bit of highlight on the new scenario, but of course that's for the deviation secure scenario, or the deviated secure. They said here that it was guided by community feedback to introduce new events and mechanics, and that they are highlighting story structure, environmental design, and community guided iterations. They're also going to keep mixing in narrative beats with fresh mechanics, so it might even tie a little bit into deviated secure scenario, at least as far as the storyline and narrative goes. That does lead me onto the world scale and regions category. People do want a larger play space. They do mention, however, that they certainly cannot expand the map without limits, but that their intent is to have a larger scale scenario that are in the scope. However, team size and resource limits run away map growth, but they do still intend for it to be larger in scale. Which also, we did talk about this one previously. That was the Western Isles that are in development. Now that was kind of teased in a recent developer live stream, and they do hit on that notion again, saying they are developing the Western Isles region. So that is the next major regional expansion. That area will be a bit denser, but this will have mechanics anchored areas over empty square mile spacage. So it does seem like that area is going to be a bit more interactive. And again, tying back into the larger play space, it does seem like we'll eventually get a map that has all regions combined into one. It does seem like that's at least their goal, but that they do want to hit on the point that there is a limit eventually. Next up here, they did hit on the platform and accounts section. Someone did ask here, would there be an Xbox version? And they said there will definitely be an Xbox version here. They do want a wider console rollout here that is on the roadmap, and that timing will be displayed via official channels. They have been hinting at that, so it does mean it will hit here eventually. It is good to know they'll have an Xbox version though, because a lot of games have been kind of pulling back from that and have been only doing a PS5 release, but it does seem like both consoles here will get that rollout. Again, when we have any updates on that, I will let you guys know. Next up here is a major question. That's the regional account transfers. A lot of people do want to swap regions or take their accounts to different regions. They do say it's not easy to set up and that accounts are split regionally for compliance reasons. There's probably a lot of local laws they have to deal with on that as well. But the reality is that it's hard due to compliance, and that accounts are there then split regionally, so that data is probably housed in different areas as well. Next up here is the mobile controller support. This has been hit on in my comment section on their Discord. A lot of people really want this. but they are quoted here saying that it requires significantly more development resources than anticipated, that they are exploring this, but it's way more complex than they expected, so it is still being under evaluation. I always did think it was for a fairness factor, especially because they won't even let PC players join mobile servers. But yeah, not 100% sure on that one. Moving on here, of course, they did hit on the new collaborations, mounts, and even mobility. So yes, the Palworld crossover is now live, and they mention here that they're bringing core spirits together with shared universes through collaboration. They have been talking about collaborations for quite some time now, and they did say the first one was going to happen in October 2025. That was all the way back in January, I believe. So we have been waiting for this one, and it's now finally here. They also say they want to do future ones with themed activities and rewards, but they do hit on here that cross-IP partnerships is chosen for creative resonance, not just the hype to pull players to the game. So they do want a reason to do the collaboration, which they definitely did get that one nailed down here with the first one. I think the Palworld one works all too well with Once Human, especially because deviations do have a major part in the game. They also do hit on here the mounts and flight. Of course, with the new collaboration, we have mountable gameplay. They also introduced the flying vehicles. It also is talks here about some future deviations, so we could even see more in the future there. Next up here is the items and weapons section based on balance, etc. There really was only one question answered here, and that was on the legacy CBT weapons. This must have been on one of the earlier versions that I didn't even play. Essentially the closed beta test. Probably was more like an alpha test here. But they had the XM8, the BAR, and the WA2000. They did mention those were temporarily removed, but they may return after a redesign and optimization. So they were shelved due to smoothness, balance, and roll overlap, with a future at a possible redesign and reintroduction if the demand stays high and those balance targets are met. So we could see those being reiterated eventually. Next up here, they hit on the enemies and difficulty. The major topic here was the Fool. They do mention their design stance there is they don't want to remove the mechanic. That's basically not under consideration, but the adjustments will be approached cautiously. They do mention that there are difficulties with the reductions and changes will be data-driven but cautious. They also are going to be looking at some known bugs and hopefully addressing those sooner than later. The last category here did hit on systems and quality of life, where for the first section they hit on the audio toggles and Sanity VFX. They do mention that a quality of life change has been formally adopted and they're going to expedite that in development. That should reduce fatigue from the red screen and pulsing audio at low sanity, so that implementation is underway. I do agree there, not a huge fan of that audio fatigue, and I think the red screen is a bit much as well. So hoping to see some decently good changes there. Next up here, people said they wanted filter search tags for the fusion pods, and that managing them does become a bit tedious. They did say here that that would require a complete overhaul of data retrieval and the interface logic. Essentially, the robust filters need deep data and UI refactors, which essentially have really high cost and risk, but they are tracking that feedback there, and a long-term solution is under evaluation. So it wouldn't be something that is done quite soon. It would take a little bit longer in the dev cycle, but they're still open to hear on that one. Another major quality of life ask here is applying all your skins like glass and steel to all structures. They do anticipating completing additions to existing packs within 3 months, and that they have ongoing development here, aiming to round out existing packs in the coming months. Seems like they didn't really answer the apply all skins question here, and I think they might have been conflating with the skin packs. It could be due to a translation error there that they didn't understand that question fully, but yeah, maybe we do get that eventually. It does seem like they are doing some additional stuff though for those packs as well, so kind of cool to see overall. That does essentially round it out for nearly every single question answered in the AMA, and hopefully I broke that one down to you. I'll link to it down below if you want to check it out, all the questions and answers. Again, they are quite long though, so be prepared for a read. Moving on here quickly, we did have some official news and community mentionables. The first one here is that there is a new Lightforge loot crate. That one will be available soon, and it has been teased here, but they also did showcase off some additional imagery here for both the female version that you can see here, as well as the male variant that they did showcase, so you can see a bit of the teaser imagery. Last up here, I haven't talked about these in quite a while, but there are some new active codes with rewards. There's a ton of them here if you wanted to claim those. I'll leave a link to the Reddit post that actually just showcased them, and I'll try to put these in the description as well. But yeah, as of right now, you can see all the different codes, as well as the updated one from my last video that I did unfortunately get wrong. Overall, that's about cover for today's video. If you enjoyed, like and subscribe. Until the next one. Deuce!